Do you have any idea where this girl may be?
I wish I know. Somebody probably see a little girl wandering around and just thinks, let me get her.
Can you tell me how you know this?
The house that they're staying in now, and if you look to the left, I used to stay in that house.
You start with a friendship with her?
Yeah, I made her as in my goddaughter.
Did you do that or?
Me. And her mama agreed.
This is 9-year-old Felicia Williams. On May 16, 2014, Felicia was left in the care of a man named Granville Ritchie. As her godmother, Ebony Wiley went out for a few hours. But by the time she came back, Felicia was nowhere to be seen. A few days later, Felicia's lifeless body was found by fishermen floating in the ocean. It would be discovered that Felicia had gone through what no 9-year-old should ever have to go through, the details of which were so horrific it would scar the town of Tampa. What did Granville Ritchie do to Felicia Williams? And how did she go from a good day out with her godmother to floating in the ocean days later? Let's explore the story of Felicia Williams, the 9-year-old who was to death by her babysitter.
What do you know about this guy?
And like in what way? Oh, what's his name? What's his last name? How could you come bring this child to someone's house and you really don't know him like that way? Not too much.
On May 16, 2014, a frantic call was made to 911 to report 9-year-old Felicia Williams missing. On the other end of the call was Felicia's mother. Felicia had gone out with her godmother, Ebony Wiley, and now Ebony was saying Felicia ran away. The authorities quickly intervened, issuing a missing persons report describing Felicia, what she was wearing, and when she was last seen. Florida police are searching for a girl who was visiting her aunt at the Doral Oaks Apartments on Tanglewood Place and wandered off. Felicia Williams, who lives in Ybor City, may have left the apartment at about 5:30 p.m. while her aunt was taking a shower. Williams was wearing a black and green striped shirt, blue jeans, and black shoes. Though Felicia was said to have been in the custody of her aunt when she went missing, Ebony Wiley, the 23-year-old woman who was watching Felicia, was not her aunt, nor was she related to Felicia in any way.
Can you tell me how you know this?
The house that they're staying in now, and if you look to the left, I used to stay in that house.
Ebony was an old neighbor of the Williams family. When she lived next door to them, though, she took a special interest in Felicia, who also loved spending time at Ebony's house. When Ebony moved, that didn't change. They continued to spend time together as Felicia's family trusted Ebony, so much so that she became Felicia's self-appointed godmother.
You start with a friendship with her?
Yeah, I made her as in my goddaughter.
Did you do that or?
Me. And her mama agreed.
As Felicia's godmother, Ebony was considered part of the Williams family. She was allowed freedom to come in and out as she pleased, and when it came to Felicia, she was given even more free rein. She was allowed to come pick Felicia up whenever she wanted, as long as she got her back at a reasonable time. Felicia was a very happy child, full of energy and always wanting to play. She was the youngest in her family, so everyone loved her.
You guys know her as Felicia. We knew her as Sugar Plum. That was our Sugar Plum. She was amazing. She was very a vibrant child, very sweet. She's very loving, very caring, funny.
Felicia was described as a sweet child who was loving and had a penchant for making people laugh. Ebony took her job as Felicia's godmother very seriously. Every time Felicia came to her house, even without telling her first, Ebony never turned her away. Sometimes, Felicia would even show up at Ebony's workplace without warning if she couldn't find her at home. Ebony had told Felicia not to come to her workplace because it could cause problems with her boss. But Felicia was a kid and sometimes forgot this advice and showed up anyway. This made Ebony worried, and she tried to figure out how to get Felicia to listen to her and stop visiting her at work. The first person the authorities interviewed in the disappearance of Felicia Williams was the last person to see her, Ebony Wiley. Ebony led them to Granville Ritchie. Granville Ritchie, a 35-year-old man, was a Jamaican immigrant who also went by the name Trevor and had only been in the United States for a short time. Ebony had mentioned to the investigators that she was with Granville when Felicia vanished. Granville, she said, was her friend whom investigators were shocked to find out. She met only 3 days before Felicia's disappearance.
How long have you known Ebony?
I know Ebony, I would say, going on to a week. I was driving and I saw her and I pulled over. I said, can I talk to you?
He actually met her while he was driving down the road. Ebony actually fell in love with Granville, like, from the moment that she saw him.
Ebony and Granville's relationship progressed rather fast.
I talked to her on the phone later on, and then we hooked up later on.
This man, who was a complete stranger, really caught Ebony's attention. Granville showed her a level of interest she had never experienced before. As Ebony and Granville spent more time together, their connection seemed to grow. However, Ebony, caught up in the excitement of newfound attention, didn't fully understand the implications of getting involved with someone she barely knew. Granville continued to be a significant presence in Ebony's life. They frequently met up at his mom's apartment after Ebony finished with work. The initial thrill of being the center of someone's attention overshadowing any concerns Ebony might have had about how fast their relationship was moving. Little did Ebony know that this seemingly charming stranger would become entangled in a dark and disturbing chapter of her life. The closer they got, the more Ebony began to trust him, and soon enough she was confiding in him about the problems she was having with Felicia.
That's when I called my friend.
You called Trevor.
And I said, you remember I was telling you about my godbaby before I want you to meet him? Like, yeah.
She told Granville that Felicia had a tendency to show up at her workplace unannounced, and it was getting her in trouble at work. She expressed how frustrated she was with Felicia and how desperately she needed help.
I was like, I want to go over there and whoop her with a belt, because she's supposed to be in the house.
Granville jumped in, offering to help her get through to Felicia.
Like, no, just do it the right way. You know, let's bow her tongue. Talk to her that way.
From what Ebony told the investigators, it sounded like Granville was a kind person who knew how to take care of children. After just a few days of knowing each other, Ebony and Granville decided to join forces to tackle the problems Ebony was having with Felicia. They planned to take her out for a nice day, get some food, and then talk to her together.
So Trevor came over and picked you up?
From my house. I picked her up at her house.
Did she tell her mom where you were?
But not exactly where we were.
Just
because her mom would trust in me.
And then you drove right from there to?
Checkers.
I said, you hungry? We want Checkers, rtured Checkers, all the food, we were food. We went back over with my mom's.
Granville and Ebony both told investigators they drove to Granville's mom's house at Temple Terrace after enjoying their lunch. The plan, Ebony said, was to play some games, watch movies, and then have a heart-to-heart conversation with Felicia. And the day seemed to progress that way until things took an unexpected turn.
We were there chilling. Of course, me and the girl is gonna get private. You know what I mean?
Ebony and Granville narrated what happened next to the investigators. They said they decided to have some private time together in the bedroom, which meant Felicia was left alone in the living room, watching a movie they'd put in for her.
Before we go in the room, I put a movie in.
We watching it, mellow down, we chilling, we go in the room, going to take a shower, in the shower.
Ebony told investigators she had checked in on Felicia before going into the shower, and she was fine and still occupied by the movie. But by the time she got out of the shower, Felicia was gone.
I said, well, I knew to go check on her before I lay in this bed. As soon as I opened the door, this girl went out on the couch.
When we came out of that room, man, that little girl was gone.
In cases like this where there are two witnesses or suspects, the investigators often look for holes in their stories, or where their story does not match up. But in this case, Ebony and Granville's stories lined up perfectly. From what they told investigators, Felicia must have run off, and initially there was no reason to doubt their stories. But there was something that puzzled the investigators about this case. Why would a 9-year-old run out of a house she's not familiar with into an area she's even more unfamiliar with?
Looked at the balcony, looked in the other room, all that. From there, I went back in the room. I said, this girl is gone.
We there, pondering. She's like, call the cops. Pray.
Felicia's family was devastated when they got the news about their daughter going missing.
When I first got the call from my mom, she was like, Sugar Plum missing, can you help me find her? I'm like, no, I'm not helping you. She not missing. I know Sugar Plum is not missing. She is on her bike somewhere at a friend's house and she'll be home soon. As the time went by and I was telling my cousin, I'm like, this just don't feel right.
What investigators were telling Felicia's family was difficult to believe. It was impossible that Felicia would run off. She was not a reckless child, and she knew better than to put herself in that kind of danger. But there were investigators telling them that very thing. Felicia was missing. And although they didn't want to believe it, they would soon have no choice.
I don't know what she was thinking in her mindset. What I feel truly happened is that she went with someone who made a bad judgment.
As the investigation into the disappearance of Felicia Williams continued, the investigators discovered one strange thing. Ebony didn't seem to know much about Granville. It wouldn't have been a shock had their relationship not progressed as fast as it did. But it made the investigators wonder why she would leave a child she was entrusted with in the hands of someone she barely knew.
Do you know about this guy?
And like in what way? What's the name? What's the last name? How could you come bring this child to someone's house and you really don't know him right that way? Not too much.
Although Ebony admitted to not knowing much about Granville, and maybe even to the fact that it was reckless to have left Felicia with him, she was clear on one thing. He could not have done anything to Felicia. The reason, she said, was she'd been with him all through and never let him out of her sight.
I knew he couldn't have because I was in the room.
Do you know that for sure?
Do I know it for sure? Yes, sir.
You were with him every second of the time.
Yes.
Ebony further revealed something to investigators that strengthened their resolve that Felicia had run away.
Did she ever talk to you about running away?
Plenty of times.
At this point, the investigation was reaching a dead end. The working theory was that Felicia ran away. She probably had some trouble at home and saw the perfect opportunity to escape her troubles when she was left alone at Granville's mom's house. But then there's the fact that Granville and Ebony never heard the door lock or unlock, and Felicia's family insisting she was well loved and cared for at home, and there was no reason for her to run away.
Do you think that she could have walked home from there?
She probably could have.
And let's not forget that Felicia did not know the area she was in, and the only person familiar to her in that space was Ebony. It is highly unlikely that a child would leave a space where she felt protected to venture into an unknown area.
Why would Felicia suddenly abandon that kind of port, that kind of harbor of safety when she's in a strange environment? All of a sudden she's just going to walk out of the door?
It wasn't adding up, and the investigators knew they were missing something huge. But no matter how hard they tried, they could not get Granville to slip up.
Do you have any idea where this girl may be?
I wish I know.
Plus, he had an airtight alibi who happened to be in the other room, telling investigators the very same thing he was telling them. Something had to give, so they decided to lean in a little harder on Ebony and see if they could get her to slip up. Luckily for them, she slipped up and revealed a rather surprising detail she left out before.
Did he tell you to say that he wasn't there? To say that his mom was there?
Yeah, say it was my mom with you. I said, well, okay. And that's why I said I was in the shower, she was in her room.
Ebony confessed that Granville had told her what to say at the police station. And because she trusted him, she didn't think to question his intentions. Plus, it was easier to go along with the ruse than face the fact that she had left her goddaughter with a complete stranger.
Why lie?
I got scared. I don't want to make it feel like I was an unfit godmother.
The investigators now had a reason to take a second look at Granville Ritchie. He was no longer the boyfriend who was just unfortunate enough to have a child disappear on him. He was now the #1 suspect.
Somebody probably see a little girl wandering around and just thinks, let me get her.
If anything happens to her, we have to make sure that we can, somebody's got to be brought to justice.
Granville continued to insist he had no idea where Felicia was. A day after Felicia went missing, her body was found floating in Tampa Bay. For the second time in 2 days, a detective headed over to the Williams household to give them bad news. This one would shatter the family, changing the course of their lives forever.
We was all at my mom's house. Chief of police, and then also a few detective and police officers. They started walking up the sidewalk really fast. Then once he walked in the house, he spoke to my mom. He said, I'm gonna do everything in my power to make sure we find whoever did this. And my mom just broke and fell. And then from there, that's when we knew something bad happened.
The details of what happened to Felicia were unimaginable. She had been found with no clothes on, marks on her body, and it was clear someone had taken away her innocence. The news that Felicia's body had been found swept through Tampa like wildfire, shocking and terrifying families. Additional pressure was placed on the investigators to solve the case quickly.
You have a body that is essentially deposited in water. This individual knew that they had done something wrong. They knew that they had left potentially behind trace evidence. The water is going to wash away any kind of physical remnant that's there.
Two things were clear from Felicia's autopsy. She had been murdered by a monster who hurt her tremendously before killing her, and there wasn't much evidence left behind due to the ocean. They were dealing with someone who had thought of everything, or did he? Like most criminals, this one was bound to slip up, and the investigators would be right there to catch him. In the meantime, they went back to Ebony, intending to get more information from her. Once she realized that Felicia wasn't just missing, she had been hurt and killed. Ebony was a lot more forthcoming with the investigators, desperate to help catch Felicia's killer. The investigators also realized something for themselves. Ebony's story was changing. Although some parts remained the same, there were now elements that weren't there before. The story of what happened after they got to Granville's mom's house was completely different.
Got in the house. That's when he got up and was like, Ebony, come out. We went in the kitchen like, it was.
Ebony confessed to investigators that she had not been with Granville the whole time, like she had claimed. In fact, there was a significant amount of time where she left Granville alone, with Felicia. She admitted that she and Granville agreed to get high together, but Granville, who was new in town, didn't know where to buy the so he told Ebony she had to be the one to go get it.
He said, do you know where to get some from? I was like, yeah. And he was like, okay, you gotta go. I won't stay here. I was like, going with me.
But then there was the matter of what to do with Felicia. Ebony told the investigators that she had initially wanted to take Felicia with her on the drug run, but surprisingly, or not at this point, Granville talked her out of it.
He said, oh well, nah, I don't think she should go because you know you don't got no license. And you know you could have in the car, so I think she should stay here.
Granville told Ebony it wouldn't be wise to take a child with her on a drug run because it wouldn't look good if she was stopped by the authorities on the way. Ebony thought it was a good idea at the time. She was so blinded by her feelings for Granville that she left a 9-year-old child with a man who was practically a stranger. Unbeknownst to Ebony, she had just put that little girl right in the devil's hands.
I came straight back. I ain't going nowhere else. When I got to the gate, I'm calling. I'm like, why ain't I answering the phone?
By the time Ebony came back, everything had changed. The gate was locked, and Granville was not answering his calls. After a while, he picked up and told her he wasn't home. He explained that Felicia had suddenly started craving candy right after Ebony left, so they went to CVS to buy some, but something went wrong.
I'm like, open up the door. I'm at the door. He was like, I'm not at the house. I'm at CVS. He said, this little girl at the stove, she done gone.
Ebony could not believe her ears. She immediately drove to CVS to look for Felicia herself, but couldn't find her. Just as she was panicking, Granville called her, telling her he was now back and she needed to pick him up. When she got to the house, Ebony noticed something a bit bizarre.
When I was driving up, I look up, he got his shirt off. I just see his pants and bosses, his necklace, his hat.
The scene before Ebony was a bit odd. Why would Granville have his shirt off and look that disheveled when he was just at CVS with Felicia? How much time did he have to get home and take his clothes off? But there was something else that stood out to Ebony at that time. Granville was sweaty and panicking when she got to him. She had to be the one to calm him down, deciding she was going to go pray about it, give the situation to God. But then something else happened that struck Ebony as odd. Granville told her not to go into his room. Instead, she should go into his mom's room to pray.
Go in my mom's room and go and pray. He's like, but you don't gotta go in my room, because my room a little bit junky. Go in my mama's closet.
That request was not usual, but Granville explained it away, claiming his room was very disorganized. At this point, it was looking like the investigation was back on track, and the investigators were minutes away from nailing their killer. Ebony continued to be of help to the investigators, including looking at photos of Granville's apartment taken the previous day. The aim was to see if she would be able to find something different about the apartment. She did.
What was in this room?
A suitcase with a little bit clothes here, and it was clothes in the suitcase. Clothes in the suitcase. See, that wasn't like that. All these clothes was in this You see this pile right here, it was lined up, and that's how the clothes was.
Granville's room stood out the most. It was in complete disarray, almost as if someone had dumped out the clothes in the suitcase in a hurry. Other than the clothes strewn about, something else jumped at Ebony.
Anything else in that picture?
Oh, Jesus.
What?
I see tracks right here.
What are you talking about?
Right here.
Is that different?
Yeah.
There were marks on the floor like someone quickly dragged a heavy suitcase across. Ebony also noticed the same suitcase she saw in his room the day before was now sitting in the back seat of Granville's car, unless he went on a quick out of town in the span of a few hours. It didn't make sense that the suitcase was there. All the clues started making sense, and the investigators knew they were finding enough proof to bring Granville Ritchie in. But it would be Granville himself who would provide the investigators with the missing piece of the puzzle, or at least his phone. Granville's phone records showed he was in the area where Felicia's body was found. That's not all. They also found leaves on his car tires that matched the leaves commonly found in the area where the body was left.
There was a very specific type of sand that is associated with this area as well that was found also contained within his car.
The investigators now had everything they needed to arrest the monster that hurt little Felicia Williams. Granville Ritchie was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, amongst other charges. As for Ebony Wiley, she faced charges of providing false information to officers. But as for the matter of justice for Felicia, this was just the beginning. Getting justice in cases like Felicia's is not an easy task. The investigators had a clear theory that no one could argue against, but there was no direct proof connecting Granville to the crime, even though the leaves on his tire and phone records placed him at the location. Those were circumstantial evidence at best. Although there have been cases tried solely on circumstantial evidence, it was never easy, especially not in cases where the state was seeking the ultimate sentence. The prosecutors had their work cut out for them. They had to prove beyond reasonable doubt that Granville Ritchie murdered Felicia Williams without a single shred of DNA evidence. But they had something else working against them, a new piece of legislation. In 2016, local penalty cases were put on hold after the U.S. Supreme Court declared Florida's capital punishment system to be unconstitutional. These changes delayed Granville's case for about 2 years, but that wasn't all. In that time, Hillsborough County elected a new state attorney who chose to withdraw from seeking capital punishment in several of the capital cases he inherited upon taking office. But Granville's case was one where his office did not budge. The office cited 2 aggravating factors. The victim was less than 12 years old, and the murder was related to something so horrifying they had no choice but to continue to seek the ultimate sentence. Finally, in 2019, 5 years after the murder of Felicia Williams, Granville Ritchie faced the jury.
He put his hands around her throat and he strangled her. And then he took Felicia's lifeless body and he threw it like someone would throw a bag of garbage into the cold, dark waters of Tampa Bay.
The prosecutors presented circumstantial evidence like phone data, forensics, and Ebony's testimony to the jury.
Why is it that you asked Granville, are you responsible? Did you do something to her?
Because she didn't show up. If she walked away, if she done ran down the street, she gonna show up.
Granville's defense, however, hinged on pointing out that the prosecutor's evidence was purely circumstantial and was missing the very important DNA evidence. They also pointed out the lack of defensive wounds on Granville's body.
There's no signs of a struggle in that apartment. There's no DNA evidence left by Felicia Williams that you would expect. No hair, no skin, nothing.
But the most devastating part came when the defense suggested that Felicia's injuries were not caused by Granville, but by the ocean moving her body against rocks after she died.
It's absolutely outlandish. That area of the body is very well protected.
But the finale nail to the coffin for Granville Ritchie came when a 911 call was played in court. This wasn't the call made by Ebony when she found out Felicia was missing. No, this call was made before. This call came from Granville's phone. According to the prosecutors, the call was made by Felicia, her last attempt at getting the help she desperately needed.
With Eric 911.
she punched in the numbers 911.
But before she could say anything, someone unplugged the phone. Even though there was no DNA proof, one thing was certain. Felicia suffered a terrible fate, all by herself, scared and in a lot of pain, betrayed by the one person she trusted the most. The jury reached a verdict in 2020.
We, the jury, find as follows as to count one of the charge, the defendants guilty of first-degree murder as charged.
Granville Ritchie was found guilty on all counts.
She was everything. And for him to discard her like she was nothing, like no one would never find her, it hurts.
Granville Ritchie was given the ultimate sentence by the jury. Ebony Wiley was also found guilty of her charge and was sentenced to 75 days in jail. She didn't get a heavier charge because the prosecution did not think she was involved in Felicia's death. Felicia's family didn't share that opinion.
I feel like her sentence was a slap on the wrist. She was the main reason to why we're here. It's very unfair, but it's to understand. It's how the system works.
The case of Felicia Williams devastated her family and shocked her community, but they rested easy knowing the prosecutors had gotten justice for Felicia Williams, at least where Granville Ritchie was concerned. Hey, thanks for watching. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you know of other similar cases? Let me know in a comment, and before you go, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. See you next time, and stay safe.